through sport, if you don't and you're wanting to compete at the highest level, there's a range of risks that you need to take to actually make it. Most of the time, your body and you can handle a certain level of training. It's really then about how you're recovering. Can you back up time and time again? You've got to have at least a level of your ability to control the outcome. At the end of the day, I've got to work with the right people and find a fair balance around that. There's an element of risk you've just got to take. It's simple as that. I can't give you the measure of that.
We're going to jump out the entrepreneurial world. What was a couple of tips you'd give someone?
What's some tips? First of all,
Private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we explore the strategies and steps you can take to expand your financial horizons. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we are thrilled to have Christian Ryan, chairman and founder of Fincap, join us. Christian Ryan is not just any guest, he's a visionary in the truest sense of the word. As the chairman and founder of Fincap, Christian has been the forefront of transforming the landscape of private equity and capital investments. His journey began with a simple yet powerful vision to bridge the gap between investors, mid-market owners and untapped opportunities. This vision was the catalyst for the creation of Fincap. Christian's accomplishments extend far beyond the boardroom. Christian is a former Olympic silver medalist in men's 8 rowing from the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, as he competed in World Championships events. Today, Christian joins us to share his insights on investment, the importance of vision in entrepreneurship, and how to navigate the complexities of the financial world. Thanks for coming along. How's things?
Yeah, good, mate. Good, thank you.
How about we just start from the beginning? Do you want to just give us a bit of a potted summary of who you are and what you're currently doing at Fincap?
My name's Christian. I founded Fincap about 3 odd years ago. A key component of that was, for many years now, I've been involved in investments, financial planning, wealth management, and have forayed, if you like, into the small mid-sized market side of things. They've sort of been in my blood, really. My family, various parts of my family, been self-employed and run a whole bunch of small businesses, and really, I suppose, really enjoyed not only watching them grow and survive and not survive and the challenges that all go with small businesses, but I think also what I saw with, I'm also involved with the wealth management business, that many, particularly private investors, have made their money through small and medium-sized businesses. And over time, there's successions issues that go on. It's happening today. It's going on for a long time. But I think the genesis of that meant that I wanted to provide, I suppose, private investors in particular and family groups just a simple, easy to understand mid-market types of businesses that they can, own, see, touch, feel. Almost a bit like a property, right? That you can own, renovate, hopefully, improve it, and then hopefully pass it on to, the next buyer or the next group of people. And look, there's many ways that you can skin that, but that was the genesis of it, that I was getting, I suppose, jack a little bit of, the research houses telling you to buy global macro, long, short, market neutral, all this sort of stuff, which is all fine. It wasn't for me. And for a lot of clients, they just wanted something simple they could understand and make, hopefully good returns, with what they're doing.
Got you. I mean, I think with the Fincap business, you're in a good space at the moment. If you think about the opportunities in the marketplace, it looks like equity in some of these mid-sized companies looks a pretty interesting investment. And you're 3 to 4 years through that journey. So it's a pretty interesting way for investors to get access, not to the entire investment, but put in small portions potentially, aggregate them together into interesting investment opportunities, which presumably you're bringing to the table with your team.
Yeah, look, what we focus on is there's these transactions or opportunities that really sit between too small for a big P fund, too big for a mum and dad or a single person. It's really these mid-level stuff that you really need to bring a group of people together that gives you good exposure. There's great businesses, like 90% of businesses in Australia are all small, medium-sized businesses.
True.
It's a massive market that we don't know a lot about. And a lot of them make good profits, they do good things, but they might need to, they've had enough and they want to move on and sell it. Or two, they need a succession plan and they want some young people to come in and help them grow and some new capital, associated with it. So, look, I'd have to say though, equity capital markets have been extremely difficult, in the last 18 months since interest rates rise and all that sort of stuff. I'd have to say this year though, I'd see this, I'll call it green shoots, that there are at least activity and people having conversations and allocating capital back to it. Last year, no one was interested, and maybe that now they've got the big large caps of the world have done a pretty good job in the last 12, 18 months. I think people are at least giving consideration for these types of, they're great businesses.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the green shoots are spot on. I look at that segment where you play and the opportunities look really interesting.
Yeah.
As the public equity markets are running pretty hard, and you look at the private markets, they haven't really moved that much from a valuation perspective, which to me looks like an opportunity.
You are seeing, I think, there are still segments of the market that are still finding it hard. I'd say VC, Series A, B, C.
Yep.
If you're not making good money or making a level of profit, people are still going, hey, the risk is too much.
Yep.
There's some of it, but not really. I suppose the part that we in core would like to think that we is our sort of go-to is just good, solid, I call them great Australian businesses with good margins, good profits, and they usually need three things. They need a succession plan, they need capital for expansion, or in some circumstances they need to be turned around, which are difficult, but, can be done.
Gotcha. Okay, we kicked into the detail pretty quickly then.
We did,
How about we
actually,
take a step back and let's go through sort of your education and your early career, a little bit of that journey, how you got to where you are today.
Look, I grew up, I'm a country boy from Warrnambool. I get, like my parents, like my grandparents, went off to boarding school in Ballarat at St Pat's, and then post there headed down to Melbourne like most of us did and went to uni. So when I was down in Melbourne, I was at RMIT doing my bachelor. I have an accounting tax background, which was never thought I'd be a tax or an accounting person, but it was good, sort of really good background. I actually ended up in banking and finance. So I'm part of being part of the Olympic team in Sydney. Westpac were a major sponsor of the Olympics at that stage through 2000 and 2004. So they allowed athletes such as myself to be able to train properly, as well as do some part-time work. So I was instead of like normally a lot of those degrees, the third year, RMIT, which I think is really great, the third year of your degree, you go and work, PwC or wherever it is.
Yeah.
I got away with not doing a full year. I probably ended up doing about 3 months. But I got into banking where I was able to work with the old Bank of Melbourne team in their finance, doing management accounts, P&Ls, that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
Whilst I was travelling overseas, whilst I was training, and they were still able to pay me as sort of effective as a quasi-sponsorship arrangement to allow me to keep working.
That's great.
Which was fantastic. So that grounding, I spent 5 years or so with Westpac across banking, finance, moved into the investment, financial planning area. And interesting, after that, I was so engaged by dealing with business banking and business finance. I actually went out into business and set up 3 franchise businesses with one of my clients from Westpac.
That's pretty good.
Yes and no. I was a bit of probably a 26-year-old hothead. Yeah, I can have a crack at this type thing.
Gotcha.
It was probably one of the things though. I didn't lose money. I didn't make any money, but I learnt so much about the things I didn't do right.
Yeah.
I sort of took over and hopefully got better, right the next time I got involved with, a business. And I set up a wealth management business. After that, I was with a family office group for a while, helping out across financing and investments and structures and their businesses.
Yep.
And eventually formed my own wealth management business called Bueller Capital about 15, 16 years ago.
Gotcha. So what made you jump from the safe environment of working in a bank to, say, I'm going to get out there and do it myself?
Look, I've always been there's a level of risk taking, ultimate with being, I don't know, you like the word entrepreneur or having a crack at things.
Yeah.
I think through sport, if you don't and you're wanting to compete at the highest level, there's a range of risks that you need to take to actually make it. And through that, I think I worked out after a while that I probably wasn't a great employee in a big, large corporate, and that's where I stepped out and tried to be part of the small, mid-sized market and owned some franchises.
Yeah.
It was pack and send. It wasn't.
What was it?
Yeah, it wasn't anything. It's like a simple business, like pick that, pack that, and ship it off. So I think that, and then when I went back and got involved with the family group, where I was helping them with investments and some of their businesses, I just had a real engagement for this small, mid-sized market. You have to be hands-on. You've got to be, engaged with what the business is doing. It's not a passive thing.
Gotcha.
You've got to understand the ins and outs of it, and you've got to understand more than anything else. If you get the people wrong, if you get it right, really good. If you get it wrong, it doesn't end up well, type of thing. So that's where I think, and leading to then setting up Beulah, which we set up in the middle of the start of the GFC, just
Good
a
timing.
horrible. No, it wasn't. It was probably the worst part of my life, but we survived, and I think. In this world, I think you've learnt at times that you've got to keep fighting. And I think in rowing as a sport, if anyone knows the sport, it's a hard sport. It's a great sport, but you've got to do a lot of fighting, to beat the next person or get onto the team or be an Olympic champion.
Yeah.
You can't be there and be a passive, journeyman.
Gotcha.
In that way.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. So on that rowing, taking another step back, so how does a bloke from Warrnambool, who should be surfing, I guess, or swimming or doing something,
at the time.
how do you end up rowing?
Well, in Warrnambool, being country, most country towns, it's generally footy and cricket.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the two things. And I love footy. I was doing my footy thing, and it wasn't until my older brother, who's 2 years above me, went off to boarding school at St Pat's in Ballarat. And St Pat's in Ballarat, Lake Wendouree, is a big rowing / footy school.
Gotcha.
And that's where I got exposed to rowing. And interesting enough, for those that are listeners, many of this, like Melbourne, Sydney and Queensland, they have these head of the rivers or head of the lakes.
Gotcha.
St Pat's hadn't won the head of lake for 29 years. They won in this first year. Kids are going nuts. They're in the water, and I'm just sitting there going, "Holy hell! Can I have some of that?" And that was the first time that I got really engaged by moving away from almost footy into rowing, and that's how I got exposed to it. So I left as I left Warrnambool. I then became immersed in it when I went up to Ballarat, and then followed that on. And to this day, I'm still involved. I'm president of Melbourne University Boat Club. I now try and help young athletes and they get them funding and support.
Gotcha.
To row for Australia, to go around the world, representing Melbourne Uni, in what is a global sport of rowing.
That's great. And what do you think? What is rowing? You mentioned before about sort of, you got to be tough. It's a tough sport. You got to fight. So how does that translate to business? You think it's not so much turning up to the Olympics, winning a silver medal, which is pretty bloody impressive, right? But it's the journey, right? It's the training, getting up early, presumably, all the grunt that's required.
Yeah, it's it's the belief, it's the routine, it's all those things that. There's a couple little gems I think from the sport that I probably have translated across into business. It's not just about what you do, but it's also, in a funny way, how you recover.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you hear about that a lot these days.
It's not like most of the time your body and you can handle a certain level of training. It's really then about how you're recovering. Can you back up time and time again?
Yeah.
So a little thing that I learnt. And I still do it to today.
Yeah.
Like if I'm really tired, there's no reason I'll lie on the floor for 15 minutes and do a power nap just to, recoup and get going again. Like it's just
Gotcha.
I can tune out within a minute, go to sleep, set the alarm and go again. And that allows me to feel better on top of things if I'm waning off. I get up early. I'm up and about before 5 o'clock. But I'm in bed by 9:30, at the other end. So there's those little things.
Yeah.
I think the other big thing is people.
For sure.
I was part of many eights, in rowing, and the dynamics of people, and being really aware, understanding each of the dynamics of people is something that only I think you can get right. It's quite successful. If you're aware of it, again, you don't always get these things right, but at least you can do something about it.
Yeah.
Probably the third one is, I think with rowing and like many things in life, you need to be honest and vulnerable.
Sure.
Because in sport, it's black and white.
Yeah.
It's first, second, third, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you're putting yourself out there. You are vulnerable to whatever that outcome is.
Yeah.
And in business, a business can just evolve and keep moving. But at times, with your business partners or with your team or whatever, there's just honest conversations that you're going to have. I think in my early days, I think I was a bit, like gung-ho and just shoot from the hip too much, whereas I hope that over life I've just sort of balanced that out. I still have at times when you've got to have those just honest conversations. And I think that helps either drive you forward or makes pivotal changes. And a lot of people, I don't think really want to have those. They just hope something else might happen.
Yeah. You often just got to take action, don't you? You got to do something.
You got to do something. If you do nothing, it doesn't always work. And I'm sure there's times when I've been in heated arguments or just got things wrong. And you don't always get it right. But at least I feel like if I can just have an honest conversation, that you're going to have hopefully a clear pathway forward. That might mean going in a really good way or heading in a way that it moves in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I read a point you made earlier about risk, right? I think being a sort of an athlete, obviously not being an athlete at your level, but that you've got to take risk to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, but you just got to assess the risk and make decisions. And if you make the wrong one, you got to just make your next decision, right? And hopefully you get that one right.
That's right.
It's always about balancing it. And I think from sport, you obviously pick that up. You got to make some decisions, but then it sort of transfers to be an entrepreneur as well.
Correct. I think the area that we focus in, like everyone talks about risk and reward, investment. I think why I focus like this small, mid-sized sort of area from a business point of view is most of them are profitable. Not all of them, but most of them. They're doing some good stuff, but just need help in a different way, or to push it forward, or to sell it, or whatever it is. That to me, there's a certain there's less risk to me about that.
Yeah, I understand.
Versus like I know VC guys might make 5 out of 100 bets that they make. That's a different level of risk. But for me, you've got to understand the risk that you're playing in. But there's some key things you can think about to try and mitigate that. But at the end of the day, yes, you've got to take a calculated risk based on a whole range of things. But you've got to at some point take that risk.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's okay. Some people will want to do it, and some people don't. And there's times when you really, you'll find yourself in circumstances where you have to go well beyond what you thought to actually make sure that the asset is right, or the business is going well, or someone needs to change, or that's what I mean. That if you're sitting up owning 100 or 200 or 500 or 600 or $1 billion business. There's processes, there's corporate stuff that's all involved and great. Yeah. You can probably afford to be a little bit more passive, whereas if you're down in a mid-market stuff, you just got to eyeball things. You got to understand it and see, hopefully make it successful.
Yeah, I mean, there's often only 1 or 2 levers that need to be pulled, right? They're generally resource constrained, whether it's financial or human. And if you can step in and provide one of those 2, that could be the kicker that makes the difference as well.
That's right, yeah.
And that comes with some experience, right?
Yeah. But outside capital, I'd say people
for sure.
Almost number one. If you get that right, great. If you get that wrong, it makes it hard.
For sure.
Because you haven't got the affordability of a big balance sheet or just a big profit line to say, well, let's get rid of that person and go for that. You're backing some key people.
Yeah, and I mean, often it's a race too, right? Like, kind of when do you run out of money for one thing?
That's right.
How quickly you can get a profitability.
Correct. That's right.
Fair enough. Okay, now looking at top 3 people that influenced you, whether it's early life, career, workplace, what was it about them?
I'd say first, I know it's a little bit cliche, the 2 most people had probably big influence on me, which has probably shaped my thinking.
Yep.
I think my father, in some respects, my dad was a country solicitor.
Gotcha.
Grew up, that whole 50s, 60s, 70s era, and was very just matter of fact and just, allowed me to learn to be, shit happens in life,
Sure.
and you just got to, not everything go right, and you just got to keep stepping through and just take it through. The other one was probably one of my, I suppose, key rowing coaches who helped me make my first Olympic team. The very philosophical, just, there's stuff we stay on the surface, but I think, you've got to dig down in yourself and try and find some deeper answers. And he was very good at that, especially when you're rowing and you're trying to take yourself above and beyond what you think you're capable of.
Yeah.
I think he was really critical. And look, I suppose from a business point of view, who do I wouldn't say admire most, if you like, or just look at being admired of, what they've done. I'll probably generalise this. I've been absolutely fascinated by the power and the strength of your big tech businesses.
Yeah.
Amazon. I know it's different, but you just sit there half the time, like Jeff Bezos and stuff, and go, they've done some extraordinary things to have those businesses in those positions.
Yeah.
Like, they're bigger and badder, they're just so much, they're big in a lot of governments around the world.
Yeah.
You just look at them and you go, they are really hard to beat.
Well, you look at it and go, like most businesses, get tired and someone takes over, but you look at it and go, who takes over that business? It's really interesting, isn't it? The interesting thing on tech is that, when you're thinking about a new business you might launch, one of the first things you think about now is scalability. And sometimes I look at business like a Xero, for example, right? They've built the tech, you just log online and you download the tech, and it's sort of nearly infinite. Obviously, they've got to keep investing in the technology to add the next widget. It just feels infinitely sort of profitable and scalable because of technology. Yeah. And that's sort of, in our era, that's what's changed a lot, right? We talk about working pre-GFC, but even earlier than that, tech started to become the big, game changer. And it definitely, that's accelerating. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now, back to the episode.
But look at Microsoft, for example. I think it's a great example of, say, using AI. Like, something might start costing you $20 a month. Well, they can put that up by 20% each year. Yeah. And people are just going to accept, paying for it. Like, there's not heaps of businesses in the world that just accept I'm going to get charged 20% more each year in there, and I can do it through data, I can do it through product, I can do it through AI. Like, it's just phenomenal.
Sure. Really. Well, I just grabbed a coffee before it cost me $5. I don't remember coffees costing $5.
Mate, we've got better coffee down here in Melbourne, so that's why
I actually assumed that was the case. Right, a couple of pivotal moments in your life. You've talked about people that have influenced you. There's actually a couple of days or weeks when you go, that really turned the dial in hindsight.
I think if I go back to when we started the wealth business, I think because we started, it felt for a period of time there, I nearly had to shut up the doors because GFC was on, everyone was screaming and all sorts of stuff was going on. Probably some point in 2009, I felt like, hey, we just had to hang on, fight our way through, scrape our way through, and we got there and continued on with the success of that business. So I think that would be a pivotal moment. Yeah. I think there were points last year. Again, we were able to complete two, probably our biggest transactions, for Fincap, and part of that again being a very, very difficult year. I think I probably learned from just hanging on. I don't know what the word is, just fighting, pounding the pavement, talking to as many people as possible, and eventually some people will support you and others won't. But I think that has helped definitely to come into 24 being hopefully in a better position with some of these things. But also there are things you still got to fix up and get organised. It's been difficult for some portfolio companies that you've got to keep sorting out. But I'd say that's a pivotal moment last year. You go, well, no, I still think what we're offering is just really compelling for a lot of private investors. Simple, easy to understand, good Australian businesses. and being part of that. But I'd say they're two pivotal moments from a business point of view.
No question about that in business when you're starting. Like I'm 7 years into my business, and sort of that saying, it was always darkest before dawn in a way, right? You've got to keep, if you think you've got the right trade, you've got the right business, there's a rationale for existing, you do at times just have to keep grunting through, and it tends to always be a light. You may not be able to see it, but it does pop up. And if you stop, you're never going to see it. So I do get that logic. Now, we chatted at the start a bit about Fincap. We might just jump back there for a minute.
Yep.
Now, what's the why behind it? If you're to try and wrap it up in a couple of sentences, why do you do it?
Why I think is that I genuinely enjoy helping working with people in this small, medium-sized market.
Yep.
There's a lot of wealth of that in Australia.
Yep.
And there's a lot, I've seen it through our wealth business, that people are looking to sell down, succession plan out, a whole bunch of these great businesses that no one knows about. We only really hear about X number of percent on the ASX listed markets.
Yep.
We just don't hear about these great businesses. And we deal, like a range of accountants get to see these fabulous businesses. And they only come to market, or you don't know when they come to market. Like there's not really a market. So you got to, again, dig around, find stuff and deal with your partners to try and find. So I genuinely like helping that and then creating something. Now, the beauty of the capital markets these days, there's more options available than just doing an ASX listing option if you want to exit.
Yeah, for sure.
P guys are here, secondary market, all different options. So you know that when you get into these things, I know I've got to get it at least to a certain size.
Yeah.
That means I've made hopefully good money, a good outcome for everyone. And if I can do that, I don't need to wait for it to be, $1 billion business. So if it gets to that size, great, unreal.
Yeah.
But I don't need it to be like that. I can get it, make really good returns, push it along the right pathway, get the next level of capital in. Typically a lot of our transactions, we look to bring, an institution or a semi-institution with us. So we do it on a co-investment basis. So sort of giving that pathway forward, to what happens next, through the transaction.
Gotcha. I mean, what I like about your space is the control as well, right? Like you've got direct access to the CEO, CFO, the staff. You can turn up, knock on the door. So you can actually turn the dial. Getting involved in big entities, you may deploy some capital. You're not really sure when it's coming back, and you can't really turn the dial. You can't make a difference. Whereas I'm sure a lot of your companies, you can pick up the phone right now and call the CEO and say, can you give me an update? Where are things at?
Correct.
So that's the aspect that I really like about where you're playing.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, it's sometimes not good. You're spending too much time with them half the time. But I think I learnt certainly through rowing that to influence an outcome, you've got to have at least a level of your ability to control the outcome. I'm not here being silly about it. We're not a group that wants to be full control, a majority, and have all these special terms. No, it's like we want a big chunk of the business. Yes, we'll put protective structures and all sorts of things in place, but at the end of the day, I've got to work with the right people and find a fair balance around that. And if I have to step in and get involved and be part of that, then you'll do that, because you've got to make sure that my life from an investment or advice perspective has been dealing a lot with the end client, their money, their savings.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have this ultimate fiduciary duty to make sure that's looked after. Different to, I think, a big super fund.
Yep.
Not dissing them, but a lot of the big super funds don't know who their members are really. They know there's a bunch of members there.
Yeah.
It's not their money. Whereas I'm going, we put all our money, we put our own money into every deal. We do, about 10 or 15% of each transaction. So I'm in there fighting, sitting alongside all the investors, and they know that if I'm going to hurt, then if things are hurting, I'm hurting, as well.
Yeah.
If we're being all right, well, great. We're both winning.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that alignment's critical, right?
Yeah, correct.
With your investors. Now, starting your own business, what advice would you give someone who's looking to jump from 5 years at Westpac, where you didn't really have to do much work while you were training, looking to jump out the entrepreneurial world? What was a couple of tips you'd give someone?
What's some tips? First of all, don't be as probably headstrong as I was. I just sort of jumped and ran without really thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
I mean, some people works. Two, you want to do a reasonable amount of planning, but don't be stupid around like a full business plan and all that sort of stuff. Like it changes probably the minute you walk in the door.
Sure. Yeah.
I think having some clear, just couple of simple things in your head about where you want to go and what you're doing is, I think, critical, to the pathway forward. I reckon you've got to be really creative about what you're trying to do and accept, really good feedback and input from other people, and just listen, and then finally, yes, there's an element of risk you've just got to take. Yeah, it's simple as that. I can't give you the measure of that. You just within yourself. You see many times that there are corporate types that should just recognise that either their life circumstances mean that they need to stay in that world because they get paid X and got a couple of kids and that sort of stuff. Actually, I do think, here's my advice. When I first started on my business, I had 2 children under 3. Yeah. It's actually probably, well, maybe because I'm divorced now, but it was probably the best time to, start a business because, and if you've got your cash costs low, like you've got them as low as you can wear it for a period of time, whether that's 1 year or 2 years or whatever you think is appropriate to get through to that next level. Yes, you do get flexibility, but at the end of the day, it's hard, and you've got to accept that it's a hard thing until you get through whatever point you need to get through to do that. And that's why some people we see, again, these mid-market, we can find someone that's really good, needs some capital, but there's a really good current successful business. If we combine good people with a good business and help grow together, that is a less riskier option because you're not starting from scratch.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's I reckon that's something I think a lot of people should think about. If you're looking to step out now, even if you're 40s or 50s, find a good, almost old school business in an old, archaic world. Yeah. Makes good money, but you can modernise it. Yeah. Like we're in the caravan and camping space. We think that's still a really archaic world. We like owning parts and accessories. Simple as that. But we've got to bring new technology, new ways of doing it. There's still I think, a lot of old schoolness about it. Yeah. But if we can take that to that with, people out caravanning, getting out all over the place, we think that's a really good spot. As an example, one business as we got involved in, we made one, we added another. It's making, good profit, and we bring new people in to, help grow it.
I mean, that's spot on too with that risk side of being an entrepreneur. If you start at absolute time zero with a one-page strategy, no clients and limited money, that's a bigger risk than, joining a business that's 2 years into its trajectory. You come in as potentially a joint owner or buy into the business. Once you've seen the trajectory, different trade.
Correct.
And so different risk profiles work for different people, right?
That's right.
Where you're investing in a way, you're stepping into that journey of another entrepreneur and helping them take that next step. Yeah. So it's interesting.
And the journey might have gone the wrong way. It's all very different, and look, we don't do any startups really. It's just not my thing. There's a certain level of risk. That's okay. I prefer to be over here. Yeah. If you can buy it really well, really cheap, that there's an exit pathway, somewhere up there.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. Now, what about some bumps in the road? I mean, it sounds like your first crack at being an entrepreneur was break even. Which
wasn't even that. So my first crack was I wasn't getting paid. It was like having disputes with my partner. And
part of business.
But at least I hadn't put any money in, right? So that was good. But again, learnt a lot. Second one is GFC. That was a big bump. I thought I was, had it well thought out, but no, it was pretty much the next day, bell rings and the GFC's on.
It was on.
So that was that. I think on a personal note, through your journey, I think stuff that happens in your personal life, I reckon is no doubt about it, has ramification, not if it's ramification, it has flow-on effects that you don't realise. Unfortunately, I got divorced about 7 years ago. That in itself, your mind, goes in different spots.
For sure.
You've got other things you need to deal with. I I think that's a bump in the road, although you come out the other side of it in a different way.
Yep.
And probably the other one is, a lot of listeners and people will have, various family things that go in life. I had some things going. My son who's fortunately turned the corner, and that in itself drains you of, not drains, it really pulls you in internally to understand what's going on and what you should be, focusing on. And life will give you bumps in the road all the time. Like, you got to accept that, as I say, shit happens, and got to have that positive, eventually hopefully come through it and say, oh God, there's some really positive things that we're doing that you want to, keep on top of.
It challenges that allocation of time too, right?
Correct.
I've got to try and build a business to, maybe survive and pay the bills. I got my family on one side I got to allocate time to. So that's one of the challenges, right, that a lot of people will face.
Oh, yeah. I reckon I learnt, although I may have realised at the time, I learnt a lot about myself through a divorce.
Gotcha.
And what to, how you allocate your time and how you need to, hopefully be a better person, or not a better person, just is there stuff that got lost, and hopefully you can learn about that and bring it back to the front, the next time, you go around. That affects everyone, and no matter which way you skin it, and it will affect you in business, and it'll affect you, but if you let it drag forever and a day, then it'll really affect everything else. You've just got to find some help, some ways to step you through that, to actually then come through out the other side going, yep, like I'm in a better spot here and I'm ploughing on.
Gotcha. Goes back to the sporting days, right? You got to take your bumps.
Oh,
got to fight on.
Oh, correct. Like there's a lot of positives hopefully in your life and what you get out of it. I'm still annoyed we lost, right? And it's 24 years later. I've got Paris Olympics this year. I go to Olympics each year and go and watch our guys that we support and from a boat club point of view, and which I get a lot of enjoyment out of, different to, but there's a part of me that I failed. Right?
Gotcha.
Now, I don't think about it every day. I thought about it a lot for a long time, and there was probably a point there going, well, what does that actually mean? For a long time, and this is also relevant to business, I thought so much about just winning a gold medal, about the outcome, that not that I forgot about everything else, but when I got there and I didn't win, it was quite an empty sort of feeling, because I didn't achieve what I wanted. But at the same time, you sit down, it's a great effort, and but we should have won.
Gotcha.
And some people say, well, it's like having a bad coffee. Like, you expect a good coffee,
gotcha.
Although it's the Olympics and it's a different level. It was just something inside me that for many years as a kid, dreaming, and I didn't achieve, And after in 2004 and 2008, I kept rowing in the team, but then I had my first child in Athens, and then another, and just life, not got in the way, but life happened, and it became harder and harder to train professionally, and that's what they do today. You got to be professional at pretty much what you do. You can't afford to just not do it part time, but even 3/4 time. It's got to be full on or nothing.
Gotcha. Because it depends how you measure success. Not many even get in the boat. So to get to where you got to is very, very impressive.
And that, a lot of people determine success by this particular measure or outcome, right? That is part of it, but it's not the only thing. I probably learnt from that. And so when I look at the things I'm doing, I genuinely look at success being, am I helping people? Are we creating something that's really valuable, that's got some purpose, it's got some stuff that's gonna, people are gonna enjoy being a part of, And if I get to the end of the period and, we've sold the investment and people have made money and going, that was good. I'm sure there's stuff that we'll do and we're doing that we haven't got right, and we're going to have to, keep hanging on and improving. But success, I think, can be, it's not just a measure. It's a range of things that make you go, yep, no, I'm pretty happy with what happened there.
It's less A and B in the real world. It's not first or second.
No.
There's a broad range of positive outcomes.
Yeah, that's, again, my dad, but though he was very black and white in his life growing up, there's a lot of grey. And I probably learnt that over the years. I was very black and white. now a bit more grey, but there's times you've got to be black and white.
For sure.
But
Yeah,
there's a lot more grey, in the world.
for sure. Okay, a couple of quick fire questions. First job. Start really early if you want to.
I was working at a petrol station.
Gotcha.
13-year-old. You're allowed to employ people when you were 12 or 13 back then.
Slave labour.
Slave labour. Come up to the servo and I'd put petrol in your car.
Be any good at it?
Well, it's not that hard to do, but
Yes, I'd put it. Fair enough. What's a
go.
piece of advice for your younger self?
I would say you've got to keep taking risks.
Yeah, gotcha. Good one. It kind of flows through in this conversation. What motivates you most as a person?
I think broadly I'm wanting to two things: help other people.
Yep.
That's been broadly about a lot of my
it's good.
professional careers, just helping people, whatever that is. They need financial advice or
Yep.
making investment recommendations or doing that sort of stuff. But the second one is very much about the family. Like I come from a big family, big Irish Catholic family. My mum's side to second cousin level, there's 100 of us. So being able to put our family in a really good position to enjoy what they're doing. I've got a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old in year 12, and I now have a 3-year-old. So at sort of either end of the spectrums, and it's been fabulous to watch them grow and change as they get older. As they're toddlers, they're one thing, but when they become teenagers and now adults, they're still your children, just different issues, different things that you learn and watch, which has been fabulous.
Anyone get into rowing?
They all have. It's just without choice, Trav.
Yeah, that's good. It's like my kids have got to play AFL. So, what are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
I think sticking to at least having your eyes open to new things.
Yep.
But ultimately, just sticking to some core things that you understand. Just keeping it simple.
Yep.
I don't think you need to fully complicate it. Sure, be diversified and put your stuff wherever you want to, but at least if it's pretty, I think about it in sort of risk buckets. Here's a bit of that, but just simple, whatever that is. Private businesses are about, in our mantra, it's about just simple, easy to understand businesses, and if you've got that, then hopefully you've got a long way to doing all right.
Yep. Biggest mistake you see others make in building wealth? Could be the opposite of what you just said, but
biggest mistake. I think people are genuinely able to, want to take risk. I think biggest mistake is just stopping yourself.
Yeah.
Just have a look.
Yeah.
And then work out the way you want to move forward. If you don't stop, whether it's every year or whenever that is, just don't stop and look at it and go, am I sort of heading in the right direction?
Yeah.
Then I think that's the biggest risk that you take. Because if you don't take time out for yourself, even if it's for probably that's another thing through sport I learnt is just through recovery is you've got to stop. Even if it's for 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, just stop. It could be when I get home and I just sit down, nothing going through my head. Yeah. That's one thing. But from a wealth point of view, if you just keep running, then I think you'll just keep running. You'll get to the end and go, where did all that go?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Often you just got to sit down and write down what are my investments? Do they make sense? Probably do. If they don't, what should I do about it? But if you're not actually looking, you don't know where you are.
No.
It's a very good point.
Just
stop
have a
break for a minute.
And just have a break, And you don't you get help if you need it, but if you don't, at least for yourself, sit there and go, am I heading sort of in the right direction?
When you're not working, how do you spend your time?
So I still fair bit of time in rowing, being president of the rowing club, so that has its things that it needs to do, but I love talking to the coaches and the athletes and seeing what they're doing and how I can genuinely help. I think at the end of the day, I've done a lot of coaching as well over the years at varying levels. I think if I retire, I'd love to get coaching. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy. I have a passion for the sport to make it better as a sport, because genuinely outside the sport itself, if you speak to a lot of people that have been involved in the sport of rowing, the benefits of it being working with a team, it is the ultimate team sport. There's things that you learn about yourself and about others that I think can fundamentally change people in, how they look at things, how they apply themselves, how they organise. I mean, look at my son. He was fortunate to run the first this year, but 12 months ago, he couldn't bloody organise just going to the toilet or something like that. But he got up 8 mornings a week, 8 sessions a week, this, that, and the other, and he's got it done. So
I always think I've never rowed. I always think it's one of those sports that you just got to get up early every single morning and you're just rowing.
Well, pretty much. And that's why I don't mind getting up at 5 o'clock. Still, it's sort of in your blood.
Yeah.
But it's not a massively known sport. I mean, if you're in Melbourne and Sydney, you go to private schools and stuff, you'll know about it. Probably the other main thing I do is my partner's French. We love to get over to Europe and do a bit of travelling, and that sort of opened my eyes to the kids being more worldly about seeing things, and and that's not only overseas but around Australia as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. Really appreciate you making time today. Great to hear about your rowing career, about Fincap, and your positive attitude about always chugging forward.
Got to keep going, mate.
So if you're interested in connecting with Christian, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. If you'd like to find out more about Fincap, check out their website, fincap.com.au. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.